Officials in more than a dozen states have complained that they are receiving fewer doses of the coronavirus vaccine than they had been promised. Now, in response, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar decided to blame Pfizer for manufacturing challenges. However, Pfizer has responded back saying that that is not the case. They're not having any issues, and there's some sort of issue happening with the Trump administration. So several states, including Illinois, Washington, California, Georgia, Hawaii, and Nevada, are only getting half of the doses that they had expected. 4 other states are getting about 30% of the doses that they were expecting. And so Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has also said that the new shipments for the next 2 weeks are halted, and people are wondering what the hell is going on. Well, again, Alex Azar claims that the company Pfizer had experienced, quote, manufacturing challenges, and the administration was working to get more visibility into Pfizer's manufacturing process. In fact, he said part of our ongoing discussions is to remediate that and get better visibility into what we're doing or what they're doing, what challenges they're facing, because they've made significant commitments to us and others, Azar said. And of course, he also noted that Pfizer allegedly has only been able to make half of what it thought it would be able to produce this year. Now, Pfizer responded immediately and said, no, we're gonna go ahead and point our fingers at you guys. They say in a statement, this week we successfully shipped all 2.9 million doses that we were asked to ship by the United States government to the location specified by them. We have millions more doses sitting in our warehouse, but as of now, we have not received any shipment instructions for additional doses, which could probably explain why Ron DeSantis says that the next 2 weeks worth of shipments have been halted. Later, the Trump administration responded to Pfizer's statement, and it's interesting because now they're changing their tone and they're arguing, oh, no. Actually, what's going on is we're holding on to certain doses because it's a 2-dose process, and we want to make sure that we do this right. 2 senior Trump officials say it had always been the plan to distribute only 2.9 million. Of that 6.4 million doses produced in a first wave, another 2.9 million are in reserve to make sure people who got the first part of the 2-shot vaccine would be able to get the necessary second dose, they said. Another 500,000 have been basically stored in a warehouse for unforeseen problems. So why did Azar say that there was a manufacturing problem? That's what I want to know. And what do you guys think is really going on?
I mean, ultimately here for me, the real issue is there's a patent on the vaccine. It is their intellectual property, meaning that it's not able to be mass produced in a way that can actually serve everybody. Because we live in a capitalist system and somebody has to profit off of this vaccine, Pfizer is the one producing it, and people are other companies are not allowed to actually produce the vaccine, to mass produce it, to be able to meet the demand. Now, obviously, look, there's always going to be limitations on how much of the vaccine that Pfizer can produce themselves. That seems obvious, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong to say that part of the doses in the warehouses are for second doses, because I mean that's true. You need 2 doses, but ultimately the issue here is that there aren't enough doses of the vaccine, and that's because Pfizer holds the intellectual property and only they can produce it.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly is a problem with enforcing patents and refusing to share the information necessary to produce more of this vaccine with other companies involved. Now, as we know, there are other vaccines at play here. Moderna, for instance, was just recommended by the FDA panel for emergency use authorization. So we're not there yet. The FDA still has to make a decision on that, but it's planned. I mean, it's pretty much set in stone at this point. We're expecting that authorization to come down pretty soon. But I also think it's kind of interesting that Azar had this allegation against Pfizer, manufacturing problems. And then later we hear from the White House and they say, no, actually we are storing some of these doses in warehouses and this is why. And so I'm curious why that miscommunication, if it's a miscommunication, or at least that conflict in messaging exists. Like, Jayar, do you have any thoughts on that?
This is the hard part because we have to speculate to a degree about exactly why this is happening the way that it's happening. But regardless of the speculation of whether or not Azar didn't know about the vaccine distribution, and then there's another, the second half is being kept until the second stage of doses happen. Which, okay, let's address that one first, because I think between the first and the second dosages, it's supposed to be 21 to 29 days. If I read a curse, right. I quickly read something somewhere, so I don't know if that's the full real details, but it's nearly 3 weeks difference, just over 3 weeks difference. Do you have to hold half the shipments for the second half to come? What, whoever's holding it can't keep it there until these 3 weeks have passed for the people to get their second dose? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And then, so whether or not Azar knows that, or whether or not he's accusing Pfizer of being the problem when they aren't, whatever it is, this Operation Warp Speed isn't operating at the way that it was billed. It's supposed to be this innovative breakdown, get it to everyone at the highest priority possible, and we're gonna get this done. We should praise Donald Trump for it. How many times have we heard we should be praising Donald Trump for the vaccine? Geraldo said we should name it after him. Mark Levin said that we should have a ticker tape parade. Nobody does ticker tape parades anymore. That's just at football games. So we're trying to give him all this credit for something when he still hasn't finished the job yet. And you know why he still hasn't finished the job yet? Because he's sitting around watching Fox News and OAN and everything else, and he's mad about everything he sees in front of him. He's complaining on Twitter. So when you're not doing the job, things like this happen. Maybe there's miscommunication. Maybe there's people working within Operation Warp Speed that thought one thing was gonna go one way, but it's not, because there's no leadership. And then when someone does probably stand up and lead, they probably get reprimanded for, because they may do something that Trump didn't want them to do, or someone who's right under Trump wanted him to do. It's just whenever you have, what's the saying that you and Cenk always say, the fish rots from the head down. It can't be any truer than this. Nobody knows why it's happened this way, but I do know that the leadership does not know what they're doing. So things like this do happen, and you kind of can't get an answer to it.
Also, I mean, like, there have been issues with the administration, various parts of the administration not communicating with one another. And so that could be one of the explanations. But what I also found interesting in some of Azar's statements was that he really felt the need to criticize Pfizer for refusing to be part of Operation Warp Speed. Now, to be sure, the federal government did agree to buying millions of doses of the virus, and that is part of Operation Warp Speed. But what I'm specifically talking about is, when Congress appropriated money for the vaccine development, Pfizer was one of the companies that did not take the money for the research and development. And so Azar seemed to blame Pfizer's decision in that for why they're allegedly having manufacturing problems. And again, later, of course, they backed away from that message and said that, no, it's actually something completely different. We are storing the vaccine and it's part of the plan. It's always been part of the plan. I'm wondering how much of this, I don't know, and this is 100% speculation, so please take it with a grain of salt. I'm just floating the idea because I just have a gut feeling about it. How much of this is retaliatory toward Pfizer, right? Because Pfizer is the company that was, it's the pharmaceutical company that came out first with promising news of a vaccine. And they came out with that news after the election took place. And remember, Donald Trump was absolutely convinced that Pfizer intentionally did that they developed the vaccine. They knew that they had a successful vaccine, but they intentionally withheld that information from the American public before the election to hurt Donald Trump's chances of winning re-election. And so how much of this could possibly be, somewhat retaliatory, a way to make Pfizer look bad? It's just that Trump is such a vindictive, thin-skinned person that I don't put it past him. I mean, we have over 300,000 Americans dead from this pandemic, and he really could not care less. So I don't know for sure what's going on. I don't think anyone knows, and it's awful that we even need to speculate about this. But I think the big theme here is just this federal government's unwillingness to take this pandemic seriously and do what they need to do to organize the right people and to have the right strategy in place to make sure as few people die as possible, but they don't seem to care about that.
Yeah, in terms of Trump's vindictiveness, it's funny because my mind doesn't even go there because that seems so extreme that they couldn't possibly do that, right? But then you think, no, this is the Trump administration. Of course, that's definitely a possibility that this is happening because of their vindictive nature. And yeah, you mentioned how this vaccine wasn't even part of Warp Speed. It was actually partly funded by Germany. And maybe it's funny because they've been trying to take credit for these vaccines when ultimately it's not because of the fantastic American healthcare system, which of course, I'm not being serious there, but it's because of the funding from Germany into this vaccine is the reason why Americans now have this. And of course, vindictiveness absolutely could play a part in this.
We've always said, my last thought on this is we've always talked about the incompetence of this administration, and people want to talk about how you're just going to be mean and talk about Trump just to talk about Trump and you don't like him and all that. Yeah, sure. But there's something behind every time he does something like this. We wouldn't have to speculate that he's maybe being vindictive if he hasn't been vindictive for the majority of his presidency. So there's reason why you don't act a certain way, that you don't go outside the bounds of a normal political process and just do things your way because I'm the anti-politician. Well, sometimes you have to do things a certain way because you're the leader of the entire government, of the federal government. So maybe of the executive office, maybe you should do something where people can trust you. So when these things happen, maybe their mistakes do happen. We find out that people in charge of things all the time make mistakes. But if you go around bullying and yelling and barking at people all the time, no one wants to give you the benefit of the doubt. When you go behind people's backs and make sure you do things just to benefit yourself, no one is gonna believe you anymore. So you can't complain about people not trusting the process if the process on every other issue has been completely upside down. And by the last thing, super last thing, I'm Cenk Uygur. We're already gonna have some problems with confidence in the vaccine just because we already have problems with people having confidence in vaccines anywhere. So when you continue to have hiccups and screw ups like this, it just definitely doesn't help with getting the rollout going and what's gonna happen next.
Yeah, no, I think you make a great point. And it also doesn't help that you have people like Tucker Carlson essentially arguing that the promotion of this vaccine is sketchy and maybe, basically implying that people should be skeptical about this vaccine. It's just so unbelievably irresponsible, especially at a time when we have record numbers of Americans dying on a daily basis, 3,500 people a day at this point. It's beyond shameful, and these people just do not care.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, Jayar. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.